Welcome to another episode of The Evolving Martial Artist, where me, Matt Jardine, and my good fellow martial arts friend Greg Lyon, we discuss various aspects of martial arts practice and how they evolve as the martial arts journey matures. Today, we're going to be getting into teaching in the martial arts, a bit of a minefield. But before we do, please take a moment to like, subscribe, share, comment on this video. It'd be really interesting to see and hear your views, what you guys think about these subjects. Morning, mate.
Morning.
We've decided to take on a minefield, right?
We did. We did.
So teaching.
This is a selfish one for me, though.
Yes. All right. Fair enough. So teaching in the martial arts. I thought I'm going to kick this off. Can I start this by saying, do you think it's fair to assume, right, that the vast majority of martial arts instruction is done by non-trained part-time amateurs as far as teaching? Is that a pretty fair assumption?
I would say that is, if not 100%, 99.9% accurate.
So we'll go. So I need to just be slightly honest because I think we'll be representing both sides of the spectrum, but I didn't come to the martial arts through that. Bearing in mind, I came from a tennis background into formal tennis coaching. So I did all my coaching exams. And I would argue that tennis is one of the most detailed, intricate biomechanical sports on the planet, outside golf, but harder than golf because it's got all the technicalities, but it's then a moving sport as well. So I did come to this game as a teacher rather than kind of an amateur, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
So come on then, how has teaching changed? Let's get into this. What do you want to get into?
Let's do it. Well, so I didn't come from a tennis background, in case you were wondering.
So it's a safe bet if we
very well. So I'm the opposite. I didn't do the coaching thing. I am just one of the amateurs.
Yeah. So you're like the proper voice in the house, to be honest, because most people will be as you did, which is I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Your instructor at one point said, Greg, because he either couldn't or couldn't be bothered, can you take that group of 10 and can you show them, I don't know, kata X? Pretty much that's the experience.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And you were like, oh, okay.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. But the thing is, so this is what I've been thinking is I came from a traditional background, like most of us did, where you don't need to teach. You just need to get someone to copy you exactly. Do you know what I mean? Because you're not teaching the how or the why, really.
No.
You're just saying
it's very didactic learning, isn't it? Right.
Yeah.
In 1800 blackboard teaching, you lot sit there, be quiet. Children should be seen and not heard, or both not, and just copy the notes on the board. I mean, that is that style. And when you look at that, that's how we've learned. Now, it is one style, but so for those who don't know, I'm married to a teacher, an early years specialist. She's now ahead in her own place. So, and in fact, a lot of my teaching has evolved through being around what I call real teachers. That isn't to diss, by the way. I should say, by the way, when I say part-time amateurs, that isn't to discredit that. I'm just saying it's not their priority. It's not the thing they do all day. Yeah. So being around a teacher, you start to see kind of formal teaching and how it has evolved. My point is, education has moved from didactic learning, you sit there, I tell you, to what we refer to as game-based or experience or play-based learning, whereby you learn through doing. And the kind of all the science and the education and the research suggests that's the easiest and quickest way to learn. Where we, in the martial arts, that wasn't the case, was it? You just follow this 1,000 times. Don't ask about the concept or the idea.
Yeah.
Because probably they didn't know. Is that what you found?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why there are so many teachers like that, because it's easy to say, you know, this kata, just go and do that kata and get the group behind you to follow along. That's not really teaching. That's just, get them to copy you.
Yeah.
And that's how most of it works, I think, in the martial arts.
So you have now, and I know this, and we both do. So we have both been around that. I mean, I had a bit of an advantage because I already brought something else to it. So even when I was sent off into the corner, I was bringing something else to the game, which probably pissed off my teacher, to be fair. But I wasn't trying to upstage him. I just that's not how I teach on the tennis court.
No, it's just the way you do it.
To do it, right? So that's another thing. But how now then which point and how have you evolved from just that? Right, guys, I'll stand at the front. We'll keep doing it till we all get it. Don't ask questions. We just got to do 1,000. What do you do now? How have you evolved that?
So I think the way I teach has evolved with the way I train.
Okay.
And the way my martial arts has evolved, because I'm doing more. So like, obviously, I do jiu-jitsu. I do more grappling, more live drilling, that kind of thing. And you can't teach that way, where you just say, do this, because people go, well, I don't know how to do it. It's not, there's a person that you're connected to. So I kind of tend to start now with like an objective of what I want for the end of the class, and then I strip that back to the bare minimum. So like last night, we were working on single legs and defenses to them, setups, stuff like that.
For those who are not sure, a single leg is where you pick up one leg with the view of sweeping or taking someone to the floor. Yeah. I'm just picturing a karate guy going, what's a single leg? Is that a Daniel San kick, or I stand on one leg?
That's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. Yeah. Yeah. One of those. That's what we were doing. So that was what I wanted people to get. So going in, I had an end goal of what I wanted people to do. And I thought, right, I can't just show everyone the full thing, because everyone will go, well, I don't know. So we started off with a warm up that would connect to something, which is another thing we need to get into as well, that you've been posted about, and just stripped it back to the bare minimum, and just ever so slowly built up and built up and built up and built up until we got to it. That's kind of the way I do things now, and then finish with as much live work as possible.
So a couple of things that hit me right in between the eyes there. The first thing is planning. You are planning your lessons. Now, the biggest mistake. So just to go back, at some point back, I can't remember how many years ago. I'm going to say 15. That could be right or wrong. But at some point, there was some move towards trying to kind of systemize the teaching. It was linked with, I think, Leicester University, where you wouldn't try and get martial artists to teach the same thing, but there'd be some sort of teaching system, right?
Yeah.
To improve the standard. It didn't eventually happen, because the guy who set up actually sadly died. But I was asked to be an assessor, because I had a lot of actual teaching experience. I was asked to go around to different clubs and assess. My point, the biggest mistake I saw was that there was no planning. People would be driving to work, driving to the dojo, thinking, what shall I do now? So then you wonder, okay, why it's so bitty, why the system and the syllabus and the improvement is so bitty, because one day we're going to work roundhouse, another day we're going to do throw. You know what I mean? So there's no kind of continuity.
And I'll be honest, I've done that. I've been that guy.
Yeah,
I have done that.
No, absolutely, and we've all done that. I've made those mistakes as well. But being around Sherry, who's she's a professional full-time teacher, you'd be amazed how much of their time is spent planning. And so for an ordinary teacher, kind of a proper teacher, if you like, I don't like the word proper. I can't think of another one, but you know what I mean, right? Planning is such a big part. Where if you said planning to the majority of martial arts teachers, they're like, oh no, I don't plan. I just kind of will see what we do on the day. Which is why often progress is so slow. So already by planning your lessons means you're taking the time to think ahead, which is going to benefit your students. So my question is, are you finding now that you're planning your sessions, your students are improving so much quicker?
Oh, 100%. 100%. Yeah. I mean, we had with 3 newish students last night, they've probably been with us maybe 3 or 4 weeks, and they were hitting this stuff by the end of the session really well.
That's it.
So they were single legging, they were sumo geshi roll into, I mean, they were doing really well.
And I would argue that comes down to your second point, which you would talk about stripping down a lesson. I call it naked teaching, but where you strip, because we're all used to being shown a move and it's got 24 steps, and by the time you put your jacket on to leave, you've forgotten all of the steps, right?
Yeah.
So then for me as a student and then as a teacher, I'm trying to think, well, what actually is with any one thing, there's usually just one key principle, right? And once you start stripping to the key element or the concept-based learning, the actual heart of the move, you realize actually even the lowest common denominators, the weakest in your class, if you strip it to the bare minimum, they'll get it. So in a class where there are beginners, for example, you've hit the concept when even your beginners have got it.
Yeah,
because they've got another reference point. So if they've got it, then you go, and that's the benefit of planning and taking the time to undo. Let's take, for example, a choke, right? You'll go to any bunkai seminar and they'll give you, there's this choke and do this, there's a million, and you come out with your notebooks and I can never read my notes after I've made notes at seminar. I look back and go, I've got 43 steps here. I can't read any of them. Anyway, that's another point. But what happens is there's only one concept to a choke. You need dual side pressure.
Yep.
You need to press both sides until there's no blood. A hose pipe. I tell my guys, you know, hose pipe, squeeze the hose pipe, water doesn't go right now. So you don't need to remember. Analogy, you don't need to remember the details. You just need to know I need dual side pressure. So when they say to me, oh, what goes where? Which step? I don't know. It's dual side pressure. Stick something in it till the other side is as pressured as it. Now what you get is you go, oh, got it. Retention of the skill is quicker and more permanent. Plus you also see invention, because students start to go, well, my second hand's not available, so I'll put a foot in there, or I'll put pressure, or I'll use the floor pressure, or what, it doesn't matter. But it comes from taking the time to strip it down.
I was watching yesterday Oliver Enkamp's video on his it wasn't a buggy choke.
It was an inverted triangle, actually.
Inverted triangle. Yeah. He broke it down. And so Jesse goes, well, where did you learn this? He goes, well, I learned it in my first pro fight because I ended up in this position and I thought, how do I finish this? Well, I just stick this there.
There it
I
is.
Ended up in an inverted triangle.
Because when you turn out of the triangle, sometimes you end up back to front in this inverted triangle. And then you go, I don't know what to do. So stick something in it. If you know the concept, you can just shove pressure in there. Exactly. Yeah. But that invention, you don't see, I don't see in karate much, because if you only have the didactic 2 times 2 is 4. I almost forgot my 2 times table. I was about to quote.
That's staying in.
Yeah, that's
teacher, you say.
2 times 2 is 4.
I'm not sure now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, cut. but you see that when you just follow that line without thinking of the concept. So basically, there's not learning going on. There's kind of rote going on. Learning for me, for example, is a 2-way relationship. It's a discovery. It's a process. It's like learning a language, for example. You could read all the words you want, right, and try and remember them. But until you go into the supermarket and say, you know, shukran or good morning or whatever it may be, it's not the language. And it's the same in martial arts. Just because you can follow all these moves doesn't mean it's yours. And I think when you can start thinking on the fly, then you've embedded a concept, you see.
Yeah, absolutely. Language is a good one. You just, because I've heard so many people say, oh, how did you learn this language? Well, just live there for a while. And you learn by doing.
You learn,
like you said,
by just doing.
Yeah.
Or to go to the kind of teaching vernacular for early years, game-based play, which is, as we're talking about evolving, that's the biggest. I think you'd agree that's what you've moved towards, and that's over the years I've moved towards that game-based play, because you'd argue that didactic learning, that you stand at the front, I'll show you, its assumption is based straight away on ignorance and incompetency, isn't it? Like, I'm going to teach you from day one how to stand up. You think, I got that, sir. I got that one. Put your hand down because you're at the back with the white belt. But I got the standing thing.
Yeah. I've been standing for years. I can do this.
But it does assume the
It
fact
does.
that you start a lesson going, we're going to work on this today, and this is step one, that assumes ignorance and incompetency immediately. Whereas I would argue that that's not necessarily true. People come with different skills. And more importantly, beyond that, take learning a musical instrument, right? How many of you have learned piano or something? You want to learn a musical instrument because you hear music on the radio, right? So you want to play that song. You don't want to learn scales. You don't want to sit on your kind of secondhand piano out in the hallway with your, hat and scarf on doing scales. That wasn't why I signed up. I signed up to play whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And I think that's how you kill a class, is where, before we play the game, we must do at least, 3 years of learning. Okay, right. Well, that may work in Japan, which I would argue doesn't anymore. That's a bit of a myth as well. But I would say that here, that's how to kill your students. That's how to get rid of them, because they've come to play. So I inverted it where you go, let's play the game. I'm not suggesting we just play and don't do learning. But if you play the game first, then you find the holes, which then the students are more motivated to fix when they go, I keep missing the goal. Well, I'll show you a little technique. Oh, okay. Don't you think that way around? So actually, 100%, completely on its head.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, it was when you came and taught for us that became very clear, because with the guys were warming up, and you were going, see, they're doing. Have you ever showed them how to do this, this, and this? No, but they're doing it. So I would have spent ages going, this is how you take the back, or this is how you control this arm and control this position. They're just doing it because they're not idiots.
Yeah. They're aware athletes with thoughts of their own, and allowed to have thoughts of their own. So then the challenge then for the kind of the more maturing teacher is then, okay, how do I, because you also don't want to be lazy. You don't want to be that teacher who just sits to the side, go off you go and spar. That's not what we're talking about. Game-based play isn't lack of responsibility. Game-based play is to play the game to see where the gaps are, so then the teacher, going back to planning, goes, okay, right, the whole group, none of them can, pivot on a roundhouse. I'm just saying. So then you have a very definite lesson plan rather than just making stuff up. But what you find is then when they play and they find their holes, they're more motivated to remember. But it makes the teacher then, it's easier then to create kind of progress and a sort of ongoing syllabus as well, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of a syllabus, so we've spent ages reviewing our syllabus, and eventually it's come down to a very, very small handful of notes, essentially, because listing everything you want someone to know, I can't teach like that anymore.
No, you'll find that you can't go back once you've seen the light, as it were. It's impossible to go, because that's why a lot of karate I can't go to some classes or be in some seminars, because you just go, I just don't learn like this anymore. This is not what I believe in. That's why I've sort of fallen out in love with a lot of just traditional karate. No disrespecting to those who are in, but for me personally, as a student, I'm like, it's just not bothered. I love the kind of mixing of stuff. But that's what you find. Once you do one way, it's very difficult to go back.
Yeah. So our syllabus has become kind of just broad notes on the kind of thing we want people to be able to do by a certain level. So, you're not going to get to a certain grade if you can't keep your hands up and not get punched in the face.
Exactly. Requirements rather than techniques.
Yeah.
Then the syllabus and the teaching goals, then the challenge for us as kind of, that's what I was going to say earlier and I forgot, kind of maturing teachers is, okay, how do we create an environment or a kind of a game that they learn in? Do you know what I mean? So you would start off just saying, right, everyone go and play soccer. Fine. And we find out they're all rubbish. We've had 22 people around the ball in the middle. Okay, right. So the game in its entirety hasn't worked. So what do we need to do? So then you create environments whereby, all right, well, what will lead them a certain way? You know what I mean? But still game-based. I do still think that the closer you get to the end product, whatever the final match is, the better, and as soon as possible. So that's where the thinking has to come in play. All right, what environment can I make? So, we change the rules in our. So, for example, I'll use my tennis example, right?
Mm-hmm.
The thing people wanted often to come. So this is kind of just hobbyists, not pros. That's a different teaching level, but hobbyists which come in and they want to serve well, because that's the thing you see most on the TV in the when they're showing the highlights. It's aces, right? But that's the hardest. That's the most complex skill to do. But you can't say to someone, well, it's going to take 6 months of really boring training, which is probably going to be close to, 100,000 shots hit. So, okay. All right, fine. So what can we do? Well, then you get them serving from the service boxes. You imagine a tennis court from the baseline. It's hard. Yeah. So you just split off the court. So they do play a game, but a turn down volume. So they maybe serve in, or you change the target they can hit into. So serve anywhere on the left-hand side of the court, and then we'll carry on the game. So you still get to play a version of the game, but you're learning. So progress and playing isn't delayed, is my point. And I think that's what we have to do as teachers in the martial arts. How do we get the final fight, but keeping it safe, keeping it standard, et cetera, but how can our lessons mimic as close to the final product as possible? That's a challenge.
Yes. Yeah. And that's what one of the things I've taken from jiu-jitsu is that kind of situational sparring type thing.
Yes.
Where you're going to spar, but your only objective is you have to pass guard, you have to retain guard, go.
Yes.
So you're still live, but you're doing, like you said, a turned down version of the final game.
Yeah. So, and you see it very clearly. It's really obvious in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And I make that differentiation because it doesn't happen like that in still old school Japanese jiu-jitsu. But in BJJ, exactly, you spend massive amount of your time playing the game. In turn down values, you're either free rolling or what we call specific or situational sparring, where here's the situation. I'm not just going to show you a move. You're going to fight out of it, and then we'll discuss the move. Okay, so here we go then. How to apply that? Because people go, it's different for striking, which I would argue it isn't. So how have you managed to apply those same processes, bearing in mind that, of course, in jiu-jitsu, you can't strike, so we have a higher risk of getting injured if you play the game in karate. How can we keep game-based play while still being safe and learning? How have you managed that?
So I tend to, I'm trying to think back to the last kind of striking specific session. We were working on footwork and creating angles. So the warm-up was literally get with your partner. What I want you to do is get to an angle, tap them on the chest so they not fall over, but they lose balance. So you want to create that angle against their line of their stance and push back. So it was a live sparring, but obviously that was the only thing you could do, was essentially reverse punch to the chest. Mm-hmm. So you're fighting for that. Then the next warm-up was, right, you can do that and add in low kicks, etc., etc. And again, we built it up. Yeah. So we started it stripped down and built it up. But everything was done live. And then once we'd kind of finished with that, I kind of had in my head who needs to work on what.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then we broke it down and looked
which
at
is
ways
right, because they're all the game, just to reiterate, it's not just time off. It's actual, it's not just go and roll now or go and spar. It is a chance for the teachers to go, okay, Bert hasn't got it. Sandra has, what we need to do to then evolve the class, which then the class becomes about not us just picking one thing, but actually going, okay, they've got this gap, let's help them. So everyone kind of gets that individual, very specific attention, which is why progress is so quick when you do game-based play.
And it also keeps everyone engaged, because if I go in and I go, right, we're going to work on just this one step to take this angle. Like 3 people might go, but I can do that. So why I don't need to keep drilling this.
Exactly.
Yes, the beginner might, but the brown belt doesn't need to. Absolutely. So why do I need to make them do it? Yeah. I can just say, you carry on with what we were doing before. Carry on playing the game.
No, absolutely.
I'll give you something else to work on.
And I like that, because basically there you were talking about adding and subtracting weapons, right? So sparring, but adding, so just a GAC or whatever it may be. And you can do that, and we do that as well. And we add or subtract either weapons and or target areas.
Yeah.
Sometimes only one can attack, one can defend.
Yeah.
So when someone's only turtling up and defending, I'm not talking BJJ turtling up, I'm talking fighting. Then, so going on the lessons, for example, I often will do, okay, one attack, one defend. So your job as the defender is only not to get hit or not to get hurt. You're going to get hit. Yeah. Now what happens is the attacker starts to go, well, I have to hit angles, because it's so easy to cover up the center that if I don't go around, and now the conversation moves to angles. You go, okay, if I can actually, even if he's covered, come around the side. Now we've got an angle conversation. And then if they don't do that very well, okay, well, maybe we have to unwind it a bit and go, well, what's happening with your footwork? Oh, you're not moving. Get on with it. You know what I mean? Whatever it may be. The other thing we do is we add or subtract the volume. So we do have a safety thing with striking. I do realize people will go, oh, yes, but in karate, it's so dangerous that if you hit someone that you can't play the game. Nonsense. If you can't find a way to play the game, it means you're not really taking the time to think about it. We just turn the volume down. Your contact to the head is a 1 on the volume out of 10. That's it. But it's the same skill.
I sparred with almost everyone last night with no gloves, no protection, no gum shield, and no right fist. So all I did was just gently feed things to people to get them to react. Now, I didn't go in and go, right, you're gonna have this now. Yeah. Have a nukate to the eye.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Just turn it right down. There's always ways around it. Absolutely.
Which leads us back to what we started the show with, which you'd said is about planning. It's I find that those who've evolved their teaching over the years spend more time considering their lessons. They haven't made it up on the drive there. They're kind of coming out, because as well as assessing your students every session, every second, I think a teacher should always assess their lesson. Some days I'll go out, that just was a lesson plan that was useless, which is fine. Which is fine. That's how you get to the good ones. And then sometimes you come out and go, and that's a really good lesson plan. The good lesson plans go in the folder. The dodgy ones, it's very rarely a complete write-off, but they'll get rewritten or dumped. Very rarely dumped, but rewritten. But that's, I think, as an educator, it's our responsibility to keep assessing our teaching as well, right? Teaching, if you do it right. When I finished the class, this isn't about me. I'm just using my example because all I've got. I'm exhausted. I'm as exhausted, if not more exhausted, teaching than I am training. Because in training, it's all about me. It's selfish. I don't have to concentrate on the guy next to me as long as I don't smash him up. I just concentrate on mine. But teaching, you're watching 50 people, and you're assessing the energy of the group, and you're moving through it, and And I believe, but to do that, you have to love it, don't you? You have to love.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest, I didn't used to when I was doing the other style that we've spoken about, the traditional you in the front, because I just found it boring. Because there was just nothing really for me to do other than just do this. Now I love it. I love the interaction with people.
You can see it. You can see it in your work, and you can see it in your students, because if you love it, they will love it. But all leads to the problem of just saying to someone in your class, can you go and take those people? Because teaching isn't something that everyone can do. In fact, very few people can do it well, and that's absolutely fine. I couldn't do accountancy. It's a great skill. I admire it. I literally could never do that. And it's the same with teaching. And to put someone, to take a group, someone who doesn't like teaching, well, then the whole group suffers. That guy or girl doesn't want to do it. His group doesn't want to be there. So my own view, we do with our school, is we have a teaching the teachers program. We have, if you want to teach, step up and we'll teach you how to teach. We won't.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
We won't assume that you will want to teach. Just to back up on that, I will use teaching to give responsibility to students who either need to settle down and learn that there are other people in the room, or to help them out of their shell. So sometimes I will use teaching instruction as a teaching instruction. If you see what I mean? That's a slightly different thing. But if we're just going on the kind of the evolution of teaching, I think people should be given the chance. Do you want to come into the teaching program? Yes or no? If you don't, absolutely fine. Some guys go, I just want to compete. I don't want to teach anyone. Cool. And that saves you half of the hassle of having those half-hour sessions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So how do you spoke about assessing your lessons. So I have ways that I try and look for feedback. I'll always ask Sue, who Conversations on Karate co-host, by the way, shameless plug.
Good podcast, that Conversation Karate.
Thank you. I'll literally always after a class message Sue, goes, feedback, how was that? So because I want to know, and I trust Sue's opinion. I wouldn't ask everyone,
yeah,
but Sue's at a level where I know Sue well enough that I would trust Sue's feedback. I would trust Sue to be honest and say, Greg, that was absolute shit. If it was shit, I would trust her to tell me that rather than go, oh, it's really good. So I always ask for feedback. I'll show, like my girlfriend, I'll say, Helen, come and watch this if it's been filmed. She has no interest in martial arts, no clue what we're doing. Can you just watch this and see if you were a beginner in the class, would you have some idea of what to do?
Yeah. Good.
So that's the kind of way I get kind of assessment. How do you do it?
So I always, there are a number, I do those things less now. I'm always constantly on my mind, but what I do, which is then part of the class, as you know, we sit in a circle to finish rather than in lines.
Yeah.
And and there is a reason for that, because my view is, I believe that teaching is like a marriage or a friendship, let's say more appropriately. It's a two-way relationship. This isn't me giving you my knowledge. This is us both sharing information. I may have a bit more experience, but it's sharing information. And with that relationship comes responsibilities. Me to you to teach, but also you to me to learn. I'm coming out, I'm teaching, I'm doing your lesson plans. You bloody well learn, or don't come, which is fine. Yeah. But let's not waste each other's relationship. Right. So that's why we sit in a circle. Boom. And at the end of each class, I like to do, which I call establish that learning has happened, establish that we have both met our criteria. My criteria is to teach. Yours is to learn. Right. So I go around the circle and each person is to say publicly, I'm a big believer in voicing. When you voice something, it starts to thread into your head. And you'll always get people who are not concentrating, who won't want to do this. This is never to embarrass them, by the way. Ever. I will never, I will do many things, but I will never purposefully publicly embarrass anyone. It's not my gig. I don't like it done to me, and I won't do it to another. So when I get people to speak out, it isn't to even the shy ones, it isn't to get them to embarrass, it's to get them to take charge. And also when you voice something, it just locks in your head. So we go around every person and I say, what one thing do you remember about this class? It can be anything to them, right? One thing. And I do insist that everyone does that. I said, listen, I've taught, you have to remember something. If you haven't met your part of the bargain. Right. And then they come around and what that does, one, if it allows me to see what has stuck in their head. Yeah. If there's a common thread. I'm also assessing kind of the energy of the group all the way through the session as well. But the things that come out are the things that go, okay, that line worked, that line didn't work. They really got that. They didn't get that.
That's good.
And it also gives a chance to kind of share in ideas. And what often will happen, other people go, oh yeah, no, I did like that one. And then you'll get this kind of mini discussion that you allow, but it establishes that learning has taken place.
Yeah. I like that. I liked it. Everyone liked that when you came and did that with us as well.
Oh yeah, did it? Yeah,
that exactly. Was one thing. Yeah, that everyone really.
So you've
liked.
Seen that
the circle thing. I've kind of organically taken that on.
Yeah.
Just because I find before we start, everyone kind of wanders onto the mat.
Yeah.
And people are talking in their groups, and a circle's kind of naturally there.
Yes.
So I hate being at the front and having a line looking at me.
Yeah.
Just like. And I go, oh, I don't like this, even though I know everyone, and I can talk to everyone fine, but I don't know why. I just don't like it.
Well, yours is a small class, a small group, and it's a perfect place for community of learning. There are times, by the way, for didactic learning, for being out the front and controlling group. When you have kind of 100, 200 people, someone has to take control. So I do agree with that. There are times with a young child that you say, keep your fingers out the plug. Why? Because I said so, and I'm your father. That sometimes this is not a democracy. This is because I said so. Sometimes that's completely appropriate, but I don't think it should be the default. And in a small group where you're learning together, you start to share ideas and thoughts. And also, I found most of my improvements in teaching come from things my students say that I'd never even thought of. I'm like, that's or they describe it in a way that you go, that's like a zillion times better. And I do tell them I will be stealing the way you've described that. And often
100%,
the students that lead the dance, if given not permission, I don't really like the word permission. That will do for now. Permission to create and be part of the learning process rather than Sensei Matt is going to teach you the Yuraken from the 1800 Chihobu cat. I literally don't even know what that is. We're just going to smack this guy in the side of the head with whatever's available. Fine. Okay. Job done. Yeah, that's how I do that.
Well, you mentioned something there that I connecting back to the last episode we did on kata. I wonder if that's why kata became so prominent, because it is an easy thing to teach in that way, where you're at the front and you have 200 people behind you.
It's completely how that happened. Remember, we spoke in the first edition about kata, cultural context. Cultural context, where linear learning, old school linear learning, is how it was done. But just as we don't live in Dickensian England anymore, so people don't live in kind of samurai Japan. So it's time to move on. It was a teaching aid that fit a time and a culture. That is not that culture, not that time now. Move on. And just holding on to that. Like, I love playing Snake on my Nokia, but I got an iPhone 13 now. Doesn't mean I hate that.
Show off.
It was fun.
Show off the phone.
But you know what I mean? It is time to just, sometimes it's time to drop a teaching aid and teaching style. Do it. Otherwise, we'll still be chalking on boards rather than using whiteboards and YouTube.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. It's a good point. So
we're coming to the end of it. We decided to keep these quite short because the general consensus was people enjoyed it with the kind of the shorter format for this. So wrapping up, man, is there anything you'd like to add about kind of teaching, the evolving game in martial arts and teaching?
I'd love to hear people's the way people teach. I'd like to hear how other people do it.
Yeah.
That's what I'd like.
I would actually. Yeah, for you guys out there, it'd be great not to be speaking into a void. We'd like to kind of open the conversation. What we're all trying to do is learn from our evolving journeys. And that includes, of course, just seeing your point of view. Some of you will agree, some of you will disagree. It doesn't matter. It's about the open debate. And after all, we can only teach about what we've or speak about what we've experienced. I agree.
One other thing I mentioned this earlier, we needed to come back to was warm-ups. You're big on functional warm-ups.
Yeah. So functional warm-ups, so warm-ups that have a function. So I'm often asked, exactly. It's clever, isn't it? I'm often asked, right, by people, what can I do to get fit for my martial arts? And I'm like, do the martial arts. And then that won't be enough. Should I go to the gym? I would just maybe go to the dojo more, probably. What about if I get some stuff at home? You could come to class 5 times a week rather than once, right? Because my view is, as you know, to play as soon as you possibly can, play the entirety of the game and stuff that looks like it. So everything that you do as extra, whether that be strength and conditioning or warm-ups, which you've asked the question about, I believe should be as closely related to that as possible. What is the point of doing a completely unrelated warm-up and by the way, warm-ups only need a heart rate lift. It doesn't need a 20-minute walk. You need a heart rate lift and a small sweat. In fact, warm-ups are hugely overrated. They don't prevent injury at all once you go beyond 3 minutes, right?
Yeah.
That's a range of motion thing. That's a completely different story. So when you warm up, do a turned down volume of the skill that you're going to teach as close as possible. We should do that in serving. I would 2 rackets in the hand. You're not hitting balls yet. Just do 10. So that's a slightly extra weight. And then I'll just do 10 slow serves. The next 10 will be slightly, by 30, 40 serves, I'm completely ready to go. And that's taken 9 minutes max. If your warm-ups are going beyond that, I suggest you run out of ideas and you need to then go back to what we started with, planning. Think about what you're doing. But your functional warm-ups are really important, and where possible, to use the body and the skills that you are going to use. It doesn't need
so it keeps
necessarily
it
need added equipment. You can, but doesn't necessarily need it. Yeah, that's my view on that. What about you?
No. Yeah, I agree. I try and keep it that way as best as possible. I do still like throwing in some press ups and stuff like that on occasion. I don't do it quite as much as I used to.
I'm completely not opposed to that, and I will still do 10 to 1, 10 press ups, sit up squats, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. But when I do it, I know it's now not just through a blind warm up. I know what I'm trying to achieve.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a full body workout. This is our strength and conditioning we're going to do up front. Good. So there's no hoodwinking. There's no, it's not warm up. This is your S&C, got out of the way early. And I'm a big believer in body weight exercise. Boom. And that's fine. You can still do those. But I think as a teacher and educator, we need to know I am choosing this. I'm not just defaulting it because that's what I've seen for 40 years.
Yeah. I guess I always try and have a reason for the particular thing I'm doing. So like yesterday, we did a little jog, and I said, right, when you get to this end, I want you to forward roll down the room.
There you go.
Run back.
There you go.
Get backward roll down the room. And everyone was like, why are we doing that? And then when it came to the single leg counters where we did like a variation on Sumigaeshi, they went, the forward roll is the person
being thrown,
and the backwards roll is the person doing the throw.
See, that's a great warm up. It fits the heart rate up. You've got all the joints moving that you're going to use in the perfect warm up, and it doesn't take long at all, does it?
No. We do spend about 5 minutes tops, maximum 5 minutes.
Nice. Yeah. And then of course you get to the real point of the class, because that's the other thing about a class as well. It's not just training, right? I'm a big believer in education. I want at the end of we have all, teachers and students, made an effort financially and time to be at the club or the academy or the dojo, right?
Yeah.
So when they leave, we all must get something out of that. So I don't just go to training. I want you to leave with something. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I do think that's absolutely essential, that everyone is rewarded in an, even if it's a 1% skill rise. I think that's really important.
Yeah.
Moving forward then into the future, where do you see your teaching of, I mean, it's difficult to predict, but where would you like your teaching to evolve to?
Oh, that's a good question. I think at some point I'm definitely going to try and do some kind of formal coaching course.
Yeah.
Just to kind of back up what I already do.
Yeah.
Maybe identify some things that I don't do so well.
That's a really good idea. I'll highly recommend. Sports England, I used to do a load of, I don't know if they still do. I'm talking back in my time, but they did a load. They were tied in with the LTA coaching exams, and Sport England had child psychology, learning, or just loads. And I would highly recommend that.
Yeah, I think that would be a good thing. As far as getting, you mentioned that the martial arts being regulated teaching, I don't know if that'll ever happen.
No, I don't think it will. They tried, and we were heavily involved in trying, and it didn't happen. Too many people, too many kind of cooks, as it were, in the kitchen, and not enough wanting to. I think a lot of people feel their freedom is stifled, or that when a lot of people don't want to be questioned, to say there's none of us want to be told our stuff's not great, right? But that isn't the point of regulation. It's trying to get some sort of system where the whole level improves. Because if we think from the student's point of view, it's an absolute minefield walking into a dojo. You could walk into this one and get beaten up. You could walk into this one and the behavior be inappropriate. You could walk this one and they're really nice, but the teaching is utter shocking. And then you could find one where the teaching is amazing. But I mean, how would you know? What's the evidence? Oh, I just saw a poster on a notice board. And what other industry, apart from alternative medicine, what other industry is that kind of like, would that happen? Just doesn't happen.
Yeah, it's true. I know I was listening to Dan Hardy and Mark Goddard the other day, and they were talking about IMAF. And apparently they're working towards kind of a universal teaching structure for MMA.
For MMA, yeah.
British MMA anyway. Yeah. So I'd be interested to see how that
I hope progresses. They do. I hope they do. I think it's essential. I say that's not to stifle creativity, although I do believe that creativity is actually enhanced by being inside boundaries. People think that creativity needs to be free. It doesn't. And I know this as a writer. You sit in front of a blank page and someone says to you, write about anything you like, and you can't think of anything.
Yeah, of course.
Give them a tiny thing to write about. Suddenly the ideas flow. So actually, it's not about stifling instructors. It's about giving them a framework that they can then evolve through, as we're talking about. But I would be interested to see what they do over on MMA for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool.
All right. For me, where am I going? I'm always trying to improve my concept-based syllabus. I'm trying to get the key principle of what I teach as naked, as strict as possible, so that the lowest common denominator, the lowest standard, gets it. I like to get my guys to fight standard as fast as possible, right? Not for any other reason other than they want to play the game. And then that you didn't think, well, if you run out of things to do, no, because that game can always improve. But they all come and they do the thing. So, game-based or experience-based learning.
I said to you before, I think you should definitely film more of your lessons, just whack them up, even if it's whole chunks, because I think people would benefit from, not just you, from watching anyone's. I love watching people's videos where it's just a hidden camera on the wall and you just watch it unfold. As opposed to someone talking to the camera. This is what we're doing today, because you see exactly how people are and exactly how people teach and learn. I learn a lot from watching people doing that.
That's a really good point, actually. That's a really good point. I may well. All right, for you guys listening out there, we're gonna leave you to it. As Greg said earlier, please take a little time just to comment, share your experiences, your ideas. Remember, ultimately, we're like you, martial artists. We know more or know less than you. We're just sharing our experiences, and it'd be lovely for the community to come back and share their ideas and see if we can all improve ourselves as athletes and also as teachers as well. All right, mate. So we'll leave it now, and then we'll decide on what we're going to discuss next time. I wouldn't mind at some point getting into Kion. That's another teaching aid.
That was going to be my next suggestion.
Oh, really? Okay, so we'll come back on,
because I think that's something that's changed massively for definitely for me.
Yeah, me too.
Big time. Yeah.
All right, you guys. We'll see you on the next episode of the Evolving
on the next one.
Martial Arts. Take care.